When our buyers are searching today, what's happening? Because something has definitely shifted. The journey that we used to have, it's ending before anyone ever clicks through to a website.
The absolute North Star would be that your site is directly cited. It is referenced as a source. What does that do? It increases the likelihood that a user will navigate directly to your site and potentially convert.
Today we have two fabulous human beings, and usually at this opportunity I take the opportunity to put a QR code up of their LinkedIn. As you'll see in a minute, they are wicked professionals because they've got their own virtual backgrounds with their QR codes for their LinkedIn profiles already on there. With that thought in mind, I just want to introduce Rory Hope and Laura Lane, both from HubSpot, both wicked, wonderful human beings who have just been so generous with their time and their thoughts. Also, my camera has gone on to the other side, so there you go, a bit of variation. Today is a bit different than normal, so today we're definitely presenting this as a co-partnered event between HubSpot and the Marketing Meetup, which in itself is just wonderful. 9 years ago when I started the Marketing Meetup, I'm not sure I ever dreamed of partnering with an organization like HubSpot. So it's really, really wicked to be able to be putting this on for you. I just also want to make sure that we do a big shout out to every sponsor of the Marketing Meetup, because they're all wonderful and without them we wouldn't be able to do these sessions. So a big thank you to Wistia, to Cambridge Marketing College, to Known, to Planable, and to Frontify. You're all wonderful brands and really, really appreciated. Now we've got Laura on screen. Rory will be joining us in just 1 minute. Rory's driving the slides as well, so like he's got a big job today. So with all that being said, then Rory, Laura, it's over to you. Thank you for being legends, and thank you so much for being here. You're absolutely wonderful. Rory, over to you.
Oh, I've also never been described as wickedly professional before. LinkedIn update pending.
I'll take it. I will take it.
There's probably a reason. There's probably
First
a reason.
and last. Thank you so much. Honestly, I have been a long-time fan of the Marketing Meetup as well. So really appreciate Joe and James putting this together, and also just the really positive community. I don't think I've ever smiled so much coming into a webinar before.
Bless you.
As marketers, I think this is a great topic. I think we're all a little bit excited about what we're going to be covering today. As marketers, I think we're also having a bit of a tough time. Things are gone a little bit awry. Things are changing pretty quickly. So Rory and I thought it would be a good chance to kind of level set, maybe share some of the things that we're seeing at HubSpot and join in this AI season as well. So really happy to get going. Rory, I can't see my screen, but I assume we have an agenda on there, do we?
I am just bringing it up now, Laura. Here we go. Can everyone see the intro slide there? I believe you can too, Laura.
Yeah, we have it.
Okay.
So excellent. The agenda, we can
yes,
get
let's get started.
So as I actually should have said hello, but my name is Laura Lane as well. So I head up the marketing team at HubSpot for Northern Europe, and really appreciate the time today. So for agenda, we are going to spend a little bit of today looking at kind of what's changing in the industry. There's been a lot of shifts, particularly around inbound marketing. So we're going to talk through maybe why those tried and true tactics that you've been playing with in the past just don't feel like they're working necessarily anymore. We brought out a new playbook kind of helping marketers power their growth a couple of weeks ago called Loop. So I'm going to be running through that. Then I'm going to hand over to Rory, who is actually the expert, not just at slide driving, but also he's our head of growth. And he's going to go a little bit deeper into what these changes mean for how we're actually optimizing for AI engines and how we kind of bring that Loop framework into life. So very practical feedback from Rory. And then we'll have time at the end for Q&A as well. So as we go through, make sure you pop your questions into the chat, and Joe will happily go through all of them with us. So why don't we kick off? What is changing? Because it feels like something has definitely shifted in the last few months. As marketers, we were very familiar with the old growth playbook, the one that built modern marketing. So the internet made information searchable, and buyers started searching. It was a very natural progression. And as sellers, we immediately reacted to that. We started helping people find us. It was simple, it was structured, and the way that we did it was through inbound. And HubSpot knew that playbook probably better than anyone because we wrote the inbound playbook model. But it kind of feels like that playbook is just not playing anymore. And there's a reason for that. So I think it makes sense for us to go back in the journey and see when our buyers are searching today, what's happening, because something has definitely shifted. So AI adoption, it's been accelerating since 2023. I think when my mom started talking about it in 2023, I knew we were onto something new. And it's really changed how we consume information in a quick amount of time. So if we think back to how buyers were searching a couple of years ago, people were seeing a list of blue links that they were landing on our website. So they might start with something, a search query like, what is marketing automation? And the search engine would hand them options. And then it was over to the user to decide which one to click. And then our job as marketers was super simple. It was make content that was visible to them. It was the most compelling one that stood out of the list. And in essence, that was the inbound playbook. But now things have completely shifted. So AI search engines, it's no longer that list of links anymore. The search engines are curating information from all of these different sources, and they're delivering unique, personalized, the single best answer through to consumers, often on that results page. So we've moved away from helping users find an answer themselves to giving them the answer instantaneously. And the result is that the journey that we used to have, it's ending before anyone ever clicks through to a website. So how we think about traffic and visibility and content, it really is changing in the last few months. So if we go to the next slide, according to Siege Media, this is a chart from Siege Media, at the rate of adoption, ChatGPT could surpass Google by 2028. That is the world's biggest search engine, being overtaken in, it's 2026 in a couple of months, so in just over 2 years. And that is signaling this huge shift in the way that people are finding answers. So even last year, we were debating over whether this change would happen and was it going to be this, this big change to buyer behavior. I think right now it's inevitable. The way that people search, they learn, they decide is going to look completely different in a handful of years to how it does today. So really, the fact that you're here learning how to adapt at this point is setting you up for success as we approach this curve that we're going through. And now, that's not to say the search engines are standing still. They are very much moving fast. We see search engines like Google adding AI-powered features to keep users in their ecosystem and to deliver instant value in the results page. I'm sure most of the searches that you do now in that Google result page, you're seeing that AI overview at the top of the page. So you're getting your answer straight away. There's no scrolling needed. There's no clicking. There's no blue links. So it means that as a user, you're getting what you need without ever leaving the search page. And the impact for that is huge. So we know that AI overviews, they're cutting click-through rates in half, and they're also now appearing in 6 out of 10 searches. So this is a huge drop to our traffic. Now, SEO expert Darren Santos called this the great decoupling. I am a little bit more basic. I prefer to call it alligator mouth because when you look at the chart, it looks a bit like an alligator mouth. So the top jaw is impressions, and that just keeps on climbing. And the bottom jaw, that clicks through, so the actual click through to your website, that keeps falling. And that gap is massively widening right now. That's the alligator mouth. And it's the perfect visual for, as a marketer, if you've been feeling like life feels like a bit of an upward struggle at times lately, it's because of this. So if you think you could be doing everything right, you could be optimizing, you could be ranking higher, you could be driving visibility and still seeing fewer clicks and less traffic, it's not necessarily that you're doing anything wrong. It's that buyer behavior has shifted from under our feet. And that can hurt. Like you might be seeing fewer leads, you might be finding it harder to actually attribute the work that you're doing, and definitely having a tougher time proving the ROI from content. And that's all because of this divergence from impression and clicks. Now, as users shift to AI platforms to find that information, as marketers, we need to start kind of considering them as this powerful channel. So they're not this other search channel. They are this powerful opportunity for us. And it's also not about protecting the traffic that we already have. So it's not like we can ring fence what we're used to. We have to play offense a little bit, and we need to tap into this new source of visibility, of engagement, of growth. So we started tracking that traffic from AI engines. And honestly, the growth has been incredible. So this is only looking back to July of 24, so it's still early, but there really is an opportunity here, a new area for marketers to start optimizing, to start powering their growth. Now we're calling this AEO, Answer Engine Optimization. AEO is very simple. It's about helping your brand show up inside the answers. So not just in those links underneath them that we know people aren't necessarily going to anymore, showing up, being part of that answer. And it's the next evolution of search. So it's not completely overriding SEO, but it's the evolution or the big sister of it. We know this shift is happening. We know that it's already happening, but it is early days. And there are people who aren't ready to hop on this bandwagon yet, if you will. So the fact that you're here, first past the post for it, and those who are adapting and leading, I think you're going to have a chance to get it right before the others kind of cotton on to what we're doing. It's my plan anyway. So it's not just the technology that's changing. We know that AI overviews are there. We know that the way the answers are being served up are there, but buyer behavior is really changing on the back end as well. So that kind of linear path to purchase that we're used to, it doesn't really look the same as it did, when we studied it back in university. And if we want to stay relevant in this new journey, we need to meet buyers wherever they are, and where they are is very different. So that journey now often starts with AI tools. It does for me. It's Amazon's big shopping day today, and the first place I went to explore what to buy was ChatGPT. So that's where people are getting their answers. They are defining their problems. They're exploring all these different options, weighing up options. And after they have that kind of AI starting point, they're turning to other people. So this is where peers are coming into it, social networks, communities and forums like Reddit. That is where people are going for that validation and that social proof. And that's where the biggest shift is, and kind of the biggest change in mentality for marketers, is that your website isn't the starting point anymore. So it's often the final stop. So it used to be that awareness stage that people came to your website. Now they're coming to you informed and often ready to buy. And we've been looking at the data for this, and we're seeing that visitors who come from AI engines, they're converting at 3 times the pace, so 3 times faster, in less time, and they're also driving a higher revenue. So it's not that kind of woeful drop in traffic that we need to focus on. People might be getting their information in a different way at the start, but those who are coming through to your website, they're showing intent and they're converting faster for more money. So I think that's the kind of the glass half full side of things that we also need to look at. Now, if we get to the next slide, Rory. All of these changes, they've really restructured that funnel that we're really used to. So that kind of downward triangle, it doesn't really feel like that anymore. So we know that awareness is scattered across different channels. So if you and your buyers are anything like me, they might be on TikTok, they might be on YouTube, Reddit, podcasts, basically anywhere but your site. And they're scrolling, swiping, switching every few seconds. So capturing them where they are is super important. And we know that middle of the funnel is broken, for want of a better word, with AI overviews giving the answers right in that search, and that 60% of searches not ending in a click. That middle of funnel, it's not working in the same way anymore. But that bottom of the funnel, that's being transformed with AI. So AI is helping us understand intent really fast. And the exciting thing is it's helping us meet people and convert them with relevant content in a more effective way. So I kind of alluded to it at the start, but the playbook isn't playing anymore. It's played out, basically. We know that awareness is scattered, traffic is shrinking, conversions are in a better place thanks to AI. But we also knew that that meant an evolution of the inbound motion that we had come up with a few years ago. So we went back to our customers, we looked into the data, we ran some internal pilots, and we came up with this new playbook, which is kind of grown in the AI era. So kind of a new way of approaching marketing with AI, and we call it the loop. It's built with humans and AI in mind. So rather than that old school one and done campaign, loop is running in a continuous cycle. And what I alluded to, it's built with humans and AI. So it's not looking at AI as the answer. It's not kind of excluding humans from it. Both need to be present and working together for that loop to flow properly. So if we start up at the start, express is the first stage of loop, and that is really the point of expressing who you are. Because if you don't know who you are and what makes you different to your audience, you will get lost in that sea of sameness that can kind of come out of AI. So any of that kind of criticism of, the AI tone of something, it's because you haven't spent the time identifying your tone, your taste, your own point of view. Then that express goes down to tailor, and that's where you need to tailor what you're delivering to your customers with content that makes them feel seen and understood. And that's really building up trust. So AI is giving you that potential to make those interactions more personal, more relevant. Like, this is the stuff that I dreamed of when I started out my career, but we would never have been able to do without adding, many, many more marketers to a team. Now we get there with AI. Next is Amplify. So it's all about meeting your buyers where they are. So showing up in the channels where they're present and getting recommended by the people who they trust, because they might not necessarily trust you, but they will trust the people in their network. And then finally, evolve. And this is an important one. In this AI time, we kind of can't go on those quarterly planning cycles anymore. We need to be adopting, we need to be agile and testing and iterating fast. So once you're evolving and making those tiny tweaks to your campaigns, you have a new playbook that flows constantly, getting better and better. So that is Loop in a nutshell. Rory, why don't I hand over to you and you can go through what that actually means, and particularly on the AI engines.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura, and hello, everyone. I'm Rory. I'm head of EM growth here at HubSpot. And as Laura laid out, the goal for the session today is to focus on how we can optimize our content strategy for AI engines. And we're going to approach that through the lens of this new growth playbook that we've called the Loop. So what I'm going to really try and do is put the Loop playbook into something very tangible, actionable for you and your teams, specifically for driving AI visibility through AEO. So let's get into it. So as Laura mentioned, we're not going to go through the whole Loop playbook in detail, but instead we're going to focus on a couple of stages that are relevant to AEO, to building AI search visibility. And really what we'll start with today is Express. And I think Express is a really key stage, because before creating any content, it's important that you express who you are, how your brand is solving problems for your potential customers. And that involves defining your taste, your tone, point of view across different stages of the buying journey to position your brand as the solution. And the best way to approach the Express stage is to inform it based on your ideal customer profiles, often referred to as buyer personas. And then you can take that foundation, you can reverse engineer it into a style guide that you can use for your AEO campaigns and to enable, if you're going to, effective usage of AI to create either a lot of that content or a portion of that content. And it's a really, really key stage, because we do know that AI can generate content in seconds, but if you don't provide AI with context through a process called context engineering, the AI generated content output may be low quality. It could even fall into the category of spam. So the Express stage will give you that, but it will also give you a blueprint for figuring out which questions you'll want to answer as part of your AEO strategy. And you win in AEO by providing the most comprehensive answer to the greatest list of questions across your buying journey. So, as mentioned, the Express stage, it's really designed to provide AI with context and to guide your AEO strategy. And it will help you to avoid creating spam. It involves deeply defining your brand's specific point of view and how your brand solves problems across the buying journey for your ideal customer profiles. And what you can do is you can include details on your brand's unique taste, its consistent tone of voice, its value prop, And all of those really need to be informed by your ICPs, your ideal customer profiles, and figuring out where your brand adds value to those ICPs across different stages of the buying journey for your different products or services that your company may offer. It's really about codifying what makes your brand different and valuable. So as a first step then, what I would recommend is laying out all of your ICP, buyer personas, ICPs across your product or service categories like the above. Imagine each grid representing a different SKU or a different service type. And it can feel like a bit of a Rubik's Cube because you might have a ton of them across different products, industries, etc. But that's okay. The key here really is to know and identify who those ICPs are, what their wants and needs are, and that will then help you to understand which questions they may ask into an AI engine. And what does that do? Well, it ultimately guides your AEO strategy. And it will, if you're going to use AI for content creation, it will give AI the context it needs to generate or optimize content for you as you scale production to increase AI visibility. Now, how do you go about building this ICP and buyer persona buying journey matrix at the express stage? Well, I highly recommend that you ground your research in data, not vague assumptions. And this will really help you to efficiently allocate marketing resources to improve AEO for the right audiences and targeting the most relevant questions. So here's how I would go about approaching this. So I would start by analyzing and gathering traditional keyword data. Yes, I know in some marketing circles, that's a sort of a forbidden thing to say these days, but still a lot of value there. This is a process that marketers are familiar with already, and it can really help you understand what your audience is actively searching for and the exact language that they're using to articulate their needs. This is important with AEO because volume data on questions or prompts that people are asking into AI engines like ChatGPT is very limited at the moment. There are a few providers that are offering a few solutions, but generally limited. So, you know, this may change as OpenAI releases an ad platform in the future with more functionality and data for marketers. But for now, I'd advise that you use keyword data from traditional search platforms as a kind of directional proxy to understand how ICPs are asking questions in AI engines. And one thing that you can do, which we've been doing at HubSpot, which is really effective, is actually using ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini to turn those traditional keywords into natural language questions. And that can help you to better set up the questions that you're going to monitor in the way that people are likely searching in AI engines. I also urge you to look past quantitative data alone and look into qualitative sources on the web. So you need to research what people are genuinely saying about you on social media or on forums and community sites about you, about your category, your competitors. And this is where you'll find that authentic, unfiltered voice of your customer. And it's really extremely useful information for defining that list of questions that your ICPs will likely be entering across the buying journey. And at the very least, you know, you can look for a subreddit or two in your niche. It may take a couple of hours, but you'll get some initial insights, and I'm confident that you'll come away with that with valuable insights into the questions that your ICPs are asking. What will that do? It will help to inform your content plans, and if you're using AI, provide context for AI to generate relevant content. There are some Reddit research tools out there to help you to do this. And finally, don't underestimate the incredible wealth of data that you may already have in your own systems, like your CRM. So you can analyze customer chat transcripts, listen to sales calls, to get that unvarnished insight into your customers' pain points, questions, and motivations. They can be absolute gold mines for understanding what truly matters to your audience. And if you're tight on time, if you've got, say, an enterprise version of ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, you can upload the transcripts and ask AI to dig through it and surface relevant questions and group them into categories. And overall, I think these methods should help you to identify a comprehensive list of questions that your ICPs will ask during the buying journey. And what does that give you? It gives you the foundation to work from when building out your brand's specific point of view, how your brand solves problems across the buying journey for each of your ICPs. Remember to express your brand's unique tone of voice, its value prop versus the competition at this express stage in the matrix. So let's walk through a practical example of how you can apply this research to a segment of your express stage, ICP, and buying journey matrix. We'll imagine a persona that HubSpot may target, a marketing manager at a 200-person logistics company. And by clearly defining who we're targeting at this stage, we can then map their specific needs and questions throughout the buying journey. And this will ideally be informed using the methods that I just referenced before, the keyword data, the social media data, the forum research, and potentially sales calls and website chat transcripts. And what we can then do is we can use this express stage ICP buying journey matrix research to anticipate the types of questions that this manager might ask across each stage of the buying journey. So at the awareness stage, they're likely asking a broad question, such as how can I generate leads for a logistics company without a big marketing team? And as they move into the consideration stage, their queries will likely become more solution-oriented, like best tools for automating email campaigns in logistics, because they'll probably have learned about email automation capabilities through and during the awareness stage, likely now, as Laura pointed out, in an AI engine and not on someone's website, which is a bit of a pain if you've been doing inbound marketing for a very long time, like I have. And finally, as they reach the evaluation and decision stages, their searches will likely become highly specific and often comparative. So they might ask feature-specific questions like, does HubSpot integrate with freight management software? Or they'll directly compare vendors searching for HubSpot versus Wales course for a logistics marketing automation. And by mapping this entire journey, we can then go about creating content that provides the right answer at every single step. And so that's an example, but you'll want to basically identify as many possible questions for each stage of the buying journey for each ICP. And that's a big process. That's a major part of the AEO process at the express stage. And then you'll clearly define your brand's unique value prop and how you're going to communicate that via tone of voice, etc. And if you do have example marketing assets and you are going to use AI to actually generate some of this content, I'd highly recommend you upload those marketing assets into either your AI projects, into HubSpot, if you're using HubSpot, into the platform that you're using, things like your brand style guide, any web page copy examples, blog posts, videos, because if you're using AI to scale any content, of course, with human QA involved during the tailor stage, that content output will be so much higher if you have human produced examples at the for the various ICPs at the various stages, and then it can use that to scale. So we're not going to go into the tailor stage in too much depth today because we're talking mostly about AEO. But let's say that you've used the express stage to tailor some on-site content, maybe some nurturing campaigns via email, accordingly in the tailor stage. But with the Amplify stage, we'll dive into how you can amplify your brand's value prop across the AI search buying journey for each of your ICPs with AEO. And with the Amplify stage, we can think of it broadly as looking to diversify our traditional marketing channel mix by embracing new channels with more potential upside, like AEO. There are others, YouTube, social, creators, etc., but we're focusing on AEO today. And we'll also learn about how you can audit your content portfolio to determine what's performing well or maybe not in AI engines with HubSpot's AEO grader. And if you are a HubSpot user, you can use HubSpot's in-product AEO strategy tool to analyze website topical coverage, and then you can receive recommendations on optimizations to make on new content opportunities. So let's dive deeper then into the specifics of AEO, which, as Laura mentioned earlier, stands for Answer Engine Optimization, and how you can go about amplifying your brand with AEO-informed content strategy best practice. And I do want to be very clear about the definition and goals of AEO. So AEO, because there's a lot of it floating around at the moment, is it GEO, is it AEO, what does AEO stand for? So let's clarify from our point of view. So AEO is the practice of increasing your company's visibility directly within answers that AI delivers to users. And that's because we're seeing this channel landscape and buying behavior shift that Laura ran us through over the last couple of years, as users are now navigating, instead of navigating a list of resources, they're being provided answers amalgamated by the AI engine across a list of resources using what's known as passages, which are sentences, paragraphs, data points, and media that the AI engine deems as authoritative and relevant through a process that is known as retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And we'll avoid getting too technical in today's session, so I won't cover RAG in detail. Maybe that's some homework for those who haven't been introduced to RAG yet. But the key takeaway is that the goal of AEO is to increase AI visibility in those answers by getting your brand mentioned by the AI engine's answer. And that can also sometimes be via citation from a third-party website's passage. And what does that do? It increases the likelihood that a user will then indirectly navigate, i.e. not clicking on a link, maybe they'll input it into the direct search bar at the top, but they will indirectly navigate to your site later in their buying journey because your brand was mentioned in an AI engine's answer. Alternatively, the absolute North Star would be that your site is directly cited. It is referenced as a source of a passage that's been retrieved by an AI engine and displayed in the answer. What does that do? It increases the likelihood that a user will navigate directly to your site and potentially convert. We are seeing, as Laura mentioned earlier, much higher intent and higher conversion rates from AI referred visits. And to fully grasp AEO, it can be helpful to contrast it with traditional SEO. So with traditional SEO, the primary goal was always really about ranking. You needed to really be in the top 3 blue links to be seen. That meant your click-through rate was high enough, you would get meaningful traffic. With AEO, that goal is different. It's really about becoming an integral part of that single synthesized answer that AI provides. And what does that mean? It means that the tactics and rewards change. So let's look at SEO being, SEO being about ranking. You've got to be part of those top 3 blue links. Whereas with AEO, it's about being mentioned or cited in part of the answer. In SEO, you targeted keywords and you used pages or backlinks to rank, pages and backlinks. Whereas in AEO, you're targeting questions which are longer queries. They generally include a much greater amount of words than a search query in traditional SEO. And you're going to use passages, sentences, paragraphs, tables, bullet points, media, to try to be included in that answer. And you're also going to try and increase the amount of mentions you get on third-party sites to be visible. So where SEO rewarded the reputation of your site, built by backlinks, maybe the EEAT framework, for those that are familiar with that, AEO at these early stages really rewards repetition. Your content and your brand needs to appear across multiple trusted sources. And with SEO, traffic volume was often the goal. Many SEO teams have been gold on traffic. It really should be high quality traffic that converts, but traffic has often been the goal with SEO. But with AEO, because the mechanics of the channel are so different, you're going to get far fewer clicks directly. But what you do want to do is you want to target high intent users. There'll be much lower volumes, but there'll be much higher intent, and convert those. And that's the name of the game. And so hopefully this all sounds pretty good, making some sense. But I'll give you a practical resource to help you understand how your brand is currently showing up in AI engines, and that's AEO Grader. So at HubSpot, we've created this free tool that you can use, and it can provide you with a baseline, basically, that you can then build on. Because what you will find is AEO question monitoring tools at this moment can be relatively pricey. I think you need to be mindful with your provider. But there are some really good ones out there still. But this will give you a free snapshot of performance so that you can start to measure and diagnose where your brand is being shown in AI answers effectively and where there might be gaps and opportunities for improvement. It's kind of like a report card on your current performance. So I strongly encourage you to check it out. And if not, type in AI search monitoring tools on Google and you'll find a list of many different software providers. We use Xfunnel, which I would recommend checking out. So let's dive into some best practice recommendations for AEO then. So let's say you've gone to AEO Grader, you have your AI visibility benchmark in place. What's next? Well, 3 kind of first steps really to help optimize your site for AEO, and that includes hyper-personalization, passage-based optimization, and moving further down the funnel. So with hyper-personalization, AI engines don't just provide a generic answer to a question, they're really striving to provide the perfect answer for a specific individual who's asking it. So they maintain historical data on each individual user's interactions, as long as you've allowed them to do so. And what they do is they store that in what's called a vector database, and then they match you, their understanding of you and your preferences to hyper relevant passages, sentences, paragraphs, tables, that they anticipate being the questions that you're going to ask. And the key here is what you'll want to do is anticipate the questions that your ICP will ask and anticipate the query fan out, which we'll go into in a second, that the AI engine will generate, and then create content that targets that hyper long tail that's hyper personalized on your ICPs. With passage-based optimization, I mentioned that AI engines stitch together passages, sentences, paragraphs, tables in their answers through a process called retrieval augmented generation. And those and those are often lifted from owned media, your site, hopefully, and you're cited, or earned media sources, third-party sites, where they might cite the third party, but your brand is referenced, it's mentioned in that citation, which is also a positive outcome. And so what you're going to want to do with passage-based optimization is you're going to want to try to create the best, the most relevant passage structured in the best way to give it the best possible chance of being retrieved via the RAG process. That's retrieval augmented generation. And so this step is all about structuring your content in a way that makes it incredibly easy for AI to understand and extract a specific piece of information to display within its answer. And finally, move down funnel, which sounds a bit like a song. I'd encourage you to think about this one in relation to how users interact with AI engines. It's often a conversation. It's not a single isolated search like we might see with traditional SEO. And as such, your AEO strategy needs to account for this conversational nature and be designed to really help the user move further down funnel and make sure your passage is being served when they follow up with a more hyper long tail query on their buying journey. And when your site is cited, is the citation, the likelihood is higher of you being at the top of the answer than if it's not cited. So really, citations are the North Star. And that's beneficial for both, being visible in answers is beneficial for both indirect AEO influence on the buying journey, where someone goes and then searches your brand in another window or in another session, or direct high intent traffic has clicked on a citation and visits your site and then hopefully converts because you've created content at those lower stages in the funnel. So let's start with hyper-personalization, and this is a core concept that basically makes AEO different from SEO. And it's really about how AI engines provide hyper-personalization for users. So they surface relevant passages using a process called cosine similarity analyses between different vector embeddings, between the user and your content, to provide the most relevant answer possible. So we'll take a seemingly simple question here that someone may enter into an AI engine. How can I generate leads for my business? And for an AI engine, the best answer is really dependent on who is asking. So the AI will draw upon a richer user profile than traditional search that might include their location, their chat history, their preferences, because this is being stored ultimately. You can visualize it as a long string of numbers known as a vector embedding. And this is then used to retrieve the most relevant passages for that user via a process called query fan out, which is a key part of the RAG process. So with this hypothetical example, we can see based on this data that the AI engine might implicitly refine the user's question, how can I generate leads for my business, into a core keyword like how to generate leads, and then it will generate a range of related queries to retrieve specific passages, sentences, paragraphs, data points from various sources based on the user's vector embedding. So what that is, it's basically that number, as I said before, that indicates, you know, who a user is, what their preferences are. And with this example then, so the AI may transform that question into a range of different questions, like how to generate leads for a SaaS company, how to generate leads for a website with low CVR, how to generate leads with a small budget, how to generate leads for a company based in Leeds. And why? Because they know a lot about the user. In this instance, in this example, it's a marketing manager in their 30s working at a mid-sized SaaS company based in Leeds. They're on a salary of 80K. Their chat history relates to challenges for creating leads and pipeline for their sales teams. They have budget challenges, and they're looking to prioritize leads. So this answer then, any answer that gets pulled for these queries will need to be relevant to these implicit queries through the query fan out process. So how can you optimize for that? Well, really, we optimize for hyper-personalization in a couple of ways. So the reality is you're not going to know the specific profile of every single user. So our job now as marketers is to anticipate the questions that our ICPs will ask across the buying journey, as we outlined in the express stage. And then you're going to create content that answers those questions. So you're going to want to build and optimize a content ecosystem that aims to answer as many possible questions that your ICPs may ask across the awareness, consideration, evaluation, and decision stages. That will give you the best possible chance of having a passage being mentioned or cited in an AI answer. So what do? Refer back to your ICP and buying journey matrix from the express stage at this Amplify stage, and you can target the questions across all of the stages if you wish. I do recommend prioritizing the evaluation decision stage questions first. And that's because we're seeing with our data that you're getting the highest likelihood of being cited when you target those stages. So let's say if we look at our how can I generate leads for my business example, you'll want to create content that answers as many possible hyper long tail questions that a query fan out process may generate based on an understanding of your ICPs. So, you know, by understanding your ICPs better, you can then figure out which questions you're going to target. And generally, sites that answer the most questions are going to win long term. And I would advise you to run experiments to guide you as to whether or not you would create this as separate pages as part of a topic cluster, or via one long form, say FAQ page, optimized for passage-based retrieval that AI can easily use for its answer. So with this, we might create pages for how to generate low-cost leads, how to generate leads in B2B SaaS, how to increase lead conversion rates, how to measure lead generation, or how to generate leads for my sales team, either as separate pages or as subheadings within a broader FAQ page relating to how you can generate leads. So how do you go about identifying all those questions? Well, there are tools out there to help you with more personalized responses. And I recommend you take a look at Kaphoria by Mike King or Dan Petrovich's Dajan's fan out tool. And these tools can help you to systematically brainstorm the questions that AI engines are likely to generate via the query fan out process. What does that do? It gives you information on which content you'll need to create. So let's take a look at this B2B focus question that someone may enter into an AI engine to see how the query fan out process may work. So the question, how can I effectively prioritize sales leads? The query fan out may then fan that question out into more long tail query questions based on your ICP's historical behavior, known attributes, preferences, and a general understanding of the questions that people may then ask as a follow-up. So you might see the fan out generate, what are the best lead qualification methods for B2B sales? What sales CRM systems help with lead scoring and prioritization? How does HubSpot's lead scoring system work compared to Wales course? And you can use those tools to expand the questions that you've identified in the express stage of the loop to basically try and identify as many possible hyper long tail queries And then you want to create content that answers those questions, optimized for passage-based retrieval. And I've mentioned that a number of times, and that's essentially, well, how do you do it? Essentially, passage-based optimization is the answer. And you know, what this is really about is it's about structuring your content in a way that makes it incredibly easy for an AI to understand and extract a specific piece of information in the direct answer. It's really about making your content machine readable, and you should go about creating content in this way or optimizing it retrospectively with semantic triples. And a semantic triple is a way of phrasing your content in a clear subject, predicate, object format. What does that do? It clearly tells an AI engine that your brand is associated with the solution related to the question that you're targeting based upon the questions research that you've undertaken. So for example, HubSpot might be targeting the question, how to generate leads in B2B SaaS. So you'll have a subheading on a solutions page, or we'll have that subheading on our solutions page within an FAQ section, and it would read how to generate leads in B2B SaaS. And our content would provide a direct answer. B2B SaaS companies can use lead generation software with X or Y features to generate B2B leads. And then you insert this semantic triple structured with HubSpot, your brand as the subject, is the predicate, what does it do? And then the object, what it wants to be associated with. A lead generation solution for B2B SaaS companies that includes X and Y feature. This is answer first framing with semantic triples baked in, and it should increase the likelihood of AI engines using your passage and actually you being cited in the response. So as I mentioned, this is answer first framing of content and using semantic triples to clearly associate your brand with the solution. And the best way of going about this is think about structuring your content in FAQs around natural language questions to give your content the best possible chance of kind of naturally being optimized in this way. And I'd also encourage you to really make use of subheadings, of bullet points, and tables to create passages, because we're seeing that AI engines are more likely to retrieve sentences, bullet points, and paragraphs structured in this way. And crucially, make sure that your content is visible in HTML and not hidden via JavaScript. Maybe ask your dev team if you don't have the technical resources via an SEO in-house, but make sure it's visible in HTML, because at present, we don't believe that AI engines can retrieve content that's JavaScript. You will not have a chance of being the response. So these simple changes in structure make it much easier for the AI to retrieve your sentence, paragraph, or data point. And it may sound obvious, but I reckon if you audit your site, you'll find many instances where you can improve structure and clarity of content. And using these techniques will do that, increasing your likelihood of being the passage that's cited. And you can use the query fan-out research to identify all the questions you'll want to answer, and then answer them with answer-first framing and semantic triples. And finally, let's reflect on why it's important to move down funnel with your AEO content strategy. So think about how people interact with AI engines. It's not a single isolated search. It's actually a process where they're going to have a conversation, there are going to be follow-up questions, and you're going to want to be the passage. You're going to want to be the mentioned or cited in the responses for those follow-up questions. And in reality, a lot of the awareness stage questions are probably already covered in AI engines training data, and therefore it's less likely to use retrieval augmented generation to try and grab new sources to cite. So it's not worth your calories anymore. Really. And if you want to try and influence the AI visibility for the questions that your ICPs are searching for, I recommend probably reverse engineering from the bottom up. So start with decision or evaluation. Make sure that when people do search for solutions, comparisons versus your competitors and your brand solution, sorry, it provides the right information, it's accurate, and then move up to consideration if you've got the resources to do so. And we're also seeing, as I mentioned, that you get higher likelihood of AI citations in those later stages of the buying journey. And when your site is cited, it's likely that it will be higher in that AI answer. So I would highly recommend that you move further down funnel. Think about your content ecosystem across, your service pages, your product pages, your blog, your solutions pages. Try and cover as many possible questions across the evaluation and decision stages, potentially consideration stages. Make sure your content is optimized for passage-based retrieval with answer first framing and semantic triples. And you really want your brand then to be included as the solution to these questions when an AI engine provides a response by building that association. And scale is key. So you can use AI here with human QA to try to create as many high quality pages that target evaluation and decision stage questions that you anticipate your ICPs are asking, or that query fan out is generating on behalf of the AI engines, by the AI engines. And that will give you the best possible chance of building AI visibility via AEO. And some results, fancy effect, I forgot that, that we can share. So at HubSpot, we've been implementing these AI strategies. We're number one in our category at the moment, which is great. Laura shared earlier the visual of the traffic, the AI traffic being up. But we're also seeing AI leads are converting about 3 times higher, which is fab because the volumes are lower, but the intent is much higher, but it's growing exponentially. We're seeing leads up silly levels of percent at the moment. Really, the companies that figure this out will grow better with AI. And let's just to finish, go back to, the graph that Laura showed us earlier today with the projections of ChatGPT overtaking Google. It might look threatening, but if we really go at it with the tactics we discussed today, try and reframe it as an opportunity and not a threat, and we'll likely see these AI engines provide more opportunities for sites to, get cited, get linked. There'll be, there's just recently been the agentic commerce release by OpenAI. Let's get into this, start following along, rolling out a few optimizations, and over time, I think this will be a really, really crucial channel for us in the next couple of years. And even if ChatGPT doesn't overtake Google, Google is bringing in AI mode into the core search experience. And a lot of these tactics, if not all, are exactly the same for Google AI mode as they are for ChatGPT. So the foundational work you do now for AEO will be key. Think about it within your loop framework. What sets you apart from the competition, and really try and dominate moving forward. So on that note, and that's my session over. There's a few minutes for Q&A, so I will pause here. Thank you everyone for listening, and thanks Laura for the wonderful slides earlier on.
Mate, well done. Thank you so much, Laura and Rory. Laurie, apparently.
You rebranded us. I love it.
Combining the two. Absolutely fabulous. I've been screenshotting like Billy-O, but hopefully the reactions on screen right now speak to a community that is, to use Helen's words here, Blumenek. That was amazing, but I think we're all blooming grateful. So thank you so much to both of you. Like, to get that was absolutely incredible, so in depth, and actually a message that I put into James, my co-founder, partway through this. It was thank you as well for not shying away from the technical terms and the technicalities of all this sort of stuff. I think that speaks to a real respect for the community. So I really appreciate that as well. And it's something that's not necessarily obvious, but hugely important. So thank you for that. In my thank yous, I've taken a moment or two to away from the questions. So we've got 24 open questions from the community presently. So I'm going to take the ones that are gravitated to the top with the rest of our time, but then I'll make sure to capture these for the two of you as well. So the one that's come to the top from the community by quite a long way actually comes from Emily, and it was quite early into the talk. So Emily says, do you see this behavior? And I'm afraid I can't remember which behavior exactly Emily was speaking about, but I think it was around the sort of point where we were speaking around the funnel and how we're sort of deciding to build things, being similar in B2B as well, or is this mostly for B2C? And I guess to widen that out a little bit, just pointing to some of the nuance between B2B or B2C might be interesting from your side.
Yeah, I'll go for it. So with my slides here, I would think about that as a B2B focus. So in the B2B space, certainly our priority and our focus has been on starting and prioritizing content at those decision, evaluation, and maybe consideration stages. I would say with B2C, it's probably going to be similar. And my biggest concern, I hope I'm answering the question correctly, but or relevantly, but the biggest concern really is a lot of the awareness stage questions are already going to be answered with historical training data, and you can put a lot of resources into them, and we're not really seeing citations or even mentions all that often, which is really where you're trying to influence. So the best way to answer that really is you would get a list of questions for a B2B search, B2C search journey, and see, are there brands being mentioned? Are they giving the sort of little citation link builds for certain sites, brands or third parties, and determine whether or not it's worth going at top of the funnel. But for the most part, I would really say with AEO, you're sort of thinking further down the funnel to try and influence there, because resources, unfortunately, yeah.
That's bang on. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Rory. If we take one more question, because it's gravitated with a similar amount of thumbs up, and then we'll close out the session after this from our hour. But as I say, we'll make sure to follow up afterwards. So an anonymous attendee asked, what about a B2P content strategy, which it's the first time I'm encountering that term, but where a purchase is not necessarily the end goal. I'm working in a public sector, third sector, where community and connection are the goals of the content strategies. So how does that work for engagement and awareness? So a switched goal really away from purchase necessarily.
I could, yeah. So I think really for me here, the main thing that I would say would be important is, without knowing the solution in too much detail, is
100%.
figuring out exactly which questions you want to be visible for when someone searches in an AI engine is really the crux of it. Like in the past, we would get lots of search queries provided to us by like Ahrefs and these search monitoring tools, but you really need to kind of cast your own net with AEO a lot of the time. So what I would recommend is looking at the community, looking at the kinds of themes and questions that are asked. If you've got Slack communities, if you've got Discord, if you've got WhatsApps, if you've got other community platforms, and then try and spot the common questions that are being asked, set those up with tracking, and then really try and make sure that if there are kind of in the answers, if your solution, if your company is part of that conversation, that's kind of winning with AEO. Because we're focused on AEO now, there would be obviously other tactics as well, but that's probably my best answer there. Certainly could be better, and maybe I could follow up on that one.
No, I love that. Thank you very, very much, Rory. I know that Laura, you've been so generous with your hour today. So I'm conscious that I have no idea what your calendar looked like, and you might be already slacking folks saying I'll be 2 minutes late to my next meeting. So with that thought in mind, I'm going to bring the session to a close today. But I just want to say a huge thank you to both of you, and also the community, for being absolutely fabulous as ever. You're completely wonderful, and this two-way interaction always makes these sessions so brilliant. We've just had the news that we've hit 1,000 folks in our online platform as well, which is really quite lovely. So if you'd like to hang out in Hive afterwards, then please do. With all that said, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to HubSpot for partnering with us on today's session. You're really appreciated. And with all that said, we hope to see you next week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rory. Thank you, Laura. And most importantly, thank you, everyone in the community. You're the absolute best. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Cheers.